interesting how these things work out, how they all work and collide together. And my part in it, I might as well make a note to. This is actually a passage in Rainbow's End where they're talking about real books and how hard it is to find anything useful. And somebody says, well, yeah, but even though out of 1,000 times I look for an answer in a real book, I may very rarely find that one thing I was looking for. There's so much I find in the meantime. So many answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask, and that is incredibly useful. And I think that's a lot of what I do. That's a lot of part of my style, isn't it? I don't get on this thing and I just answer one question, yes or no, or give you some number, or give, computers do that. Computers can do the menial things for you quite well. You want to know the height of the Empire State Building? Go look it up on Wikipedia. Why would I even bother memorizing that? Unless maybe, I don't know, I had some good reason to. If I was a tour guide. What I'm doing is I'm giving you, or trying to give you, all sorts of stuff that you weren't even thinking about. Because guess what? I wasn't even thinking about it until I started talking. It was like, for 10 minutes before I turned the camera on, I'm like, Singularity. And okay, I gotta turn the camera on now. I turn the camera on, start talking, and I end up in all sorts of territory I didn't even know I was going for in the first place. Hopefully leading you into all sorts of interesting territory you didn't even know about. Answers to questions you didn't even think to ask. Side effect, it's rather hard to even follow me. At least if you're trying to follow me in the normal, straightforward lecture style. Man, if I was ever a teacher and people were trying to take notes on what I'm saying, they'd have a really hard time doing it. And I'm on every subject ever imagined at once. Which is, by the way, how the future kind of works. We're on every subject at once. Apparently. Rushing into territory we didn't even think of. You find that in predictions of the future. You watch Back to the Future, made in 85, 1985 that is, I should specify. And they're talking about, what they go to the future at one point and they go to 2015, and it looks so odd. For one, there's a part where they pass by a payphone. I'm like, a payphone? They don't have cell phones. There's, they have public holograms, which we don't have. Of course, it's not 2015 yet. But, they don't have the internet. Completely didn't see that one coming. Amazing. Amazing. And, of course, other futures predict, horrible chaos, and everything destroys itself, and everything. Everything predicts things being so odd compared to the way they look now, anyway. There's an interesting point. Several cheesy visions of the future have, everyone wearing very strange clothing with weird colors, and maybe it's flashing, and maybe it's... And you know what? Here we are in 2007 wearing, shirts and jeans, which, we've been wearing for at least a couple of centuries now. I forget when they first invented the jeans. I think it was during the California Gold Rush. It's been a while, and there's no particular reason to change it, so we haven't. So some things won't change, Interesting stuff. Here's an interesting random thought for you. The idea of thousands of changes every second, right? Which on one hand seems far too fast and it would just blow you away. On the other hand, that's exactly how nature works. My body right now is undergoing thousands and thousands and thousands and millions and trillions of changes. All these various cells doing their various functions, getting blood and oxygen, doing digestion, thinking, awful lot of activity up there right now. That's how a tree works. Millions and millions of tiny little changes all happening at once in that tree, which eventually leads to, all sorts of things. In the meantime, it's a perfectly comfortable tree. People talk about how weird this would all be, this ubiquitous computing, for instance. And I don't think it'd be any weirder than ubiquitous literacy, which probably technically quite have yet, but pretty much it's like at the 80% level, I think, worldwide, which is more most people realize. We have written word. We have written word. I mean, we have books. You know, we have the books, but we have various signs. You know, on the road there's a sign, and there's stock ticker going by, and there's, look on the TV and look at this article right now. It's all over the place. Does that freak you out? Are you intimidated by all these new words? Not really. It's words. You know how to deal with it, right? Right. Ubiquitous computing is as unpreventable as ubiquitous literacy, basically. Ubiquitous speaking, right? Because very early man, well, he had language, didn't really have language like we would think of it, didn't pause to think what was a noun and an adjective, and, all these complexities we've invented. And yet we've invented this incredible thing and gotten used to it. People realize, you certainly can't take data processing too far, too fast. Not literally too far, but too fast. And it overwhelms you. But you realize that we're already tremendous data processors. you know? Like, if you think of, I don't know, an Amish guy who's never seen an electric item of any kind, walking around, just imagine, how many light beams are reaching his eyes at every instant. How many various colors he's looking at, cataloged against a database inside of his own brain of millions of things he has seen and millions of heuristics to figure out what something is if he hasn't seen it before. And then he figures out what everything is, and he figures out what it means and why it ought to be there, and if anything is strange and what he's looking at, just walking around, not even concentrated, just walking around, automatic things without even thinking that he's thinking. He's already thinking, and the thought that he's not thinking a thought is in fact an incorrect thought. And and you take essentially two-dimensional images, from your two eyes, and it meshes them together and figures out the 3D space, and he puts that together with his ability to move in this 3D space and his hearing and where things probably are, and he figures out where there's any inconsistencies, and he can walk and talk and communicate with various other people who are on the same plateau as him and anticipate what they're thinking, what they're going to do, and, we've always been intense data processors. I mean, that's a huge part of the definition of consciousness, right? So you know what? Maybe this new big thing we're going for isn't all that strange. Maybe it's like, and I don't know if I've thought this way, back when you were a child, right? And you look at adults, and it seems so much different, And it seems so distant that you could ever be an adult. And yet, as time goes by and you gradually become an adult, and there's no real cutoff point, but let's say, you're 18, you think, I'm legally an adult now. And you think back to your previous perspective on this, and you realize, it's really not that strange. Bit by bit, I've gotten used to it. This thing which was oh so distant before, now that I get up to it, is, I know what this is. I can deal with that. Maybe it's the same with technological progress. Things we can imagine that are so flipping weird, like telepathy, will eventually be no more strange than telephone. I mean, telephones were once incredibly strange things, weren't they? And we got used to it.